I didn't think telling my brother that his female best friend wasn't invited to my wedding would blow up my entire family. I thought it would be awkward, uncomfortable, maybe even tense for a few days. I didn't expect it to expose an emotional affair, end his live in relationship, fracture our family, and follow us all the way to a hospital on the other side of the world. But that's what happened. My wedding was supposed to be the calm, joyful milestone, the one thing in our family that felt stable. Instead, it became the moment everything cracked open. It started at my parents' dining table, surrounded by tax receipts and lukewarm coffee, when my brother Danny casually told me he wasn't bringing his girlfriend to my wedding. He was bringing her instead, Melissa, the woman who had hovered around every one of his relationships like a shadow no one wanted to name, the woman who always needed him right now, the woman who somehow always came first. When I told him no, calmly, clearly, firmly, he accused me of being bigoted, of not respecting opposite sex friendships, of trying to control his life. And then I said the thing I'd been holding back for years. I told him the truth, that whatever he had with Melissa wasn't normal, that everyone could see it, that if he couldn't set boundaries with her, he was going to lose the best relationship he'd ever had. He stormed out. 2 days later, his girlfriend called me in tears. A week after that, she left him. And from there, everything spiraled. There were emails, social media posts, accusations, friends quietly backing away, a family split between denial and reality, and eventually a phone call from a hospital in Turkey telling us my brother might not survive the consequences of his choices. I'm getting married in June. I should be worried about flowers and seating charts. Instead, I'm watching my brother destroy his life for a woman who calls him her best friend and treats him like an emotional support animal. I don't know if he'll come to my wedding. I don't know if he'll ever admit the truth. But I know this. Sometimes the most dangerous relationships aren't the ones labeled romantic. They're the ones no one is allowed to question. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, my older brother Danny was the person I trusted more than anyone else. We grew up in the same house, 5 years apart, in a family that valued stability, appearances, and quiet perseverance. Our parents ran a small accounting firm, the kind where dinner conversations revolved around clients' deadlines and tax season stress. Love in our house wasn't loud, but it was consistent. You showed up. You helped. You didn't make scenes. Danny and I fought like normal siblings, over borrowed clothes, over who got the car, over stupid childhood grudges. But when it mattered, we had each other's backs. When I struggled in college, he helped me study. When he lost his first job out of school, I was the one who reminded him it wasn't the end of the world. Even as adults, we stayed close. Every few months, we'd all sit down together, me, Danny, my parents, sorting receipts and paperwork for the business. It was mundane, boring, and oddly comforting. Those afternoons were the thread that kept us connected even after Danny moved out 3 years ago for a better job across town. About 2.5 years ago, Danny started dating Claire. She was 29, a graphic designer, and quietly extraordinary, in a way that didn't demand attention. Claire remembered birthdays. She brought homemade cookies to family dinners. Not store-bought, not flashy, just warm and thoughtful. She listened more than she talked, but when she spoke, you felt seen. My mom adored her almost immediately. My dad, who rarely commented on Danny's dating life, said once, just once, that Claire was good for him. That alone should have meant something. 8 months into dating, Danny moved into Claire's apartment. It made sense. It was bigger. It was closer to both their jobs. They built a life together in small, steady ways, shared grocery lists, inside jokes, quiet movie nights. For a while, it felt like Danny had finally grown up. But there was always one constant in his life that never shifted: Melissa. Danny met Melissa freshman year of college. Same dorm, same floor. According to him, they clicked instantly. Best friends from day one. I met her a few times back then. She seemed fine. Not warm, not cold, just there. The problems didn't start until after college. When Danny was 26, he dated a woman named Beth for over a year. Beth was kind, funny, and genuinely invested in him. Then one weekend, 2 days before a camping trip, Melissa called. She'd just broken up with her boyfriend. She was a mess. She didn't want to be alone. Danny canceled his trip with Beth and drove 4 hours to stay with Melissa for the entire weekend. Beth was upset, but she forgave him. A month later, Melissa called again. Bad day at work. Needed Danny. He canceled dinner with Beth's parents. That was the end. Danny didn't understand why Beth broke up with him. He insisted she was unreasonable, that he was just being there for a friend. After Beth, Danny dated casually. Then Claire came along, and for a while it seemed different. Melissa had a new boyfriend. She called less. She faded into the background. Until she didn't. Last summer, Melissa broke up again. And slowly, quietly, the pattern returned. Danny leaving in the middle of movies. Danny rescheduling plans. Danny slipping out of their apartment at midnight because Melissa needed someone to talk to. Claire didn't explode. She didn't accuse. She just endured. And I watched it happen, telling myself it wasn't my place to interfere. I was wrong. By the time last summer rolled around, something in Danny had shifted, and everyone could feel it, even if no one said it out loud. At first, the changes were subtle, the kind you dismiss because you don't want to believe what they might mean. Danny became harder to pin down. He showed up late to family dinners or left early, phone buzzing in his hand, like it was pulling him somewhere else. When my mom asked how Claire was doing, his answers grew vague. She's fine. Busy. Works a lot right now. Claire, on the other hand, stayed exactly the same. She still showed up, still remembered details, still asked my parents about their clients and my wedding plans, and how stressed I was feeling. If she was hurting, she didn't put it on display. But I noticed the pauses. The way she'd check her phone when Danny disappeared to take a call. The way her smile lingered half a second too long, like she was holding something back. The way she'd say things like, "Oh, Danny had to reschedule again," with a lightness that didn't quite land. That's when Melissa started resurfacing more frequently. Danny would mention her casually, as if repetition could normalize it. "Melissa's having a rough week. Melissa just needs someone right now. Melissa doesn't really have anyone else." It was always framed as concern, as loyalty, as kindness, but there was something deeply unbalanced about it. Claire never demanded ultimatums. She never forbade friendships. Instead, she tried to integrate. She invited Melissa to brunch with a group of women she'd organized herself, thoughtful, low pressure, inclusive. Melissa canceled last minute, claiming she wasn't up for socializing. That same day, she posted photos from a different brunch, with her coworkers. Claire didn't say a word to me about it, but I could see the confusion in her eyes when she scrolled past those photos later. Melissa also had a way of draining the energy from every room she entered. At our cousin's wedding 2 years earlier, she got drunk and cried in the bathroom for half the night because she'd found out her ex was engaged. At my mom's birthday party, she barely spoke to anyone, then later posted about feeling invisible. At my dad's retirement party, she made comments about how other women were overdressed, trying too hard. It was never explosive, just uncomfortable. And the worst part? Melissa was never openly cruel to Claire. She was just distant, polite without warmth, civil without effort. Like Claire was an accessory she tolerated, not a person she respected. Claire noticed. Of course she did. She tried to talk to Danny about boundaries more than once. He brushed it off every time, said she was being jealous, insecure, unfair. He insisted Melissa was just sensitive, that she needed support, that Claire was reading into things. I started feeling uneasy in a way that wouldn't go away. This wasn't about opposite-sex friendships. I knew what healthy ones looked like. My fiancé Mark's best friend is a woman. She includes me, respects me, never makes me feel like competition. What Danny had with Melissa felt exclusive. And I knew, deep down, that if this pattern wasn't interrupted, it was only going to get worse. I just didn't know the wedding would be the match that lit the fire. 3 weeks before everything fell apart, we were sitting at my parents' dining table surrounded by folders, receipts, and the quiet hum of familiarity. It was one of our routine family work days. Me, my fiancé Mark, my parents, and Danny, sorting paperwork for the accounting firm. Claire wasn't there. She was working late, which wasn't unusual. When we finished organizing the receipts, I pulled out my wedding notebook. Final details, seating, menu restrictions. I asked Danny a simple question. "Does Claire have any food allergies or restrictions?" He didn't look up when he answered. "She's not coming." The room went still. My mom froze mid-motion, papers half stacked in her hands. My dad looked up from his laptop. Mark set his coffee down slowly. I stared at Danny, waiting for him to explain the obvious misunderstanding. "What do you mean she's not coming?" He shrugged, casual, too casual. "I'm bringing Melissa instead." For a second, I genuinely thought I'd misheard him. I asked him why Claire, his live-in girlfriend of over 2 years, wasn't coming to my wedding. Danny said Melissa wanted to come. She missed everyone from our old neighborhood. A lot of our high school friends would be there, and she thought it would be nice to reconnect. I told him calmly that if I'd wanted Melissa at my wedding, I would have invited her myself. The invitation was addressed to him and Claire, not him and whoever he felt like bringing. Danny bristled instantly. He accused me of being controlling, said he should be allowed to bring whoever he wanted as his +1. I reminded him then this wasn't a +1 situation. It was an invitation to a couple. Claire lived with him. Her name was on the envelope. That's when I said what I'd been holding back. I told him I didn't want Melissa at my wedding because every time she came to a social event, something went wrong. I listed the examples, quietly, factually, the crying at weddings, the uncomfortable comments, the social media posts. I told him she had never made an effort with his girlfriends, that Claire had tried and been shut out. Danny exploded. He started yelling, saying I didn't understand Melissa, that she'd been through a lot, that she struggled socially, that I was discriminating against opposite-sex friendships. I shut that down immediately. I told him about Mark's best friend, Rachel, how she respected boundaries, how she included me, how she never made Mark choose. That's what a healthy friendship looks like, I said. What you have with Melissa isn't that. I told him my decision was final. He could come with Claire, he could come alone. But Melissa was not invited. That's when I said it, the sentence that changed everything. You need to deal with whatever feelings you have for Melissa, I told him, because it's obvious to everyone except you. Danny's face went red. He didn't argue. He stood up and walked out. The front door slammed behind him. And in the silence that followed, I knew something irreversible had just begun. The house stayed quiet long after Danny left. Not the comfortable kind of silence, the kind that presses against your chest and makes you aware of your own breathing. My mom sat there with her mouth slightly open, like she was replaying the conversation in her head, trying to figure out where it had gone wrong. My dad finally broke the tension by closing his laptop and saying carefully that he wasn't getting involved, but that he'd never liked Melissa much anyway. That night I went home and didn't sleep. I replayed every word I'd said, every tone shift, every expression on Danny's face. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I knew I'd hit something he wasn't ready to look at. The next day, I made a decision that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. I sent a separate invitation to Claire. It was addressed only to her, sent to the apartment she shared with Danny. I included a handwritten note telling her that regardless of what was happening with my brother, she mattered to me and to our family. That she was welcome at my wedding. No conditions, no awkwardness. 2 days later, Claire called me. Her voice was calm but tired, the kind of tired that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. She told me she and Danny had been fighting about Melissa for months, that she'd tried to be understanding, tried to trust him, tried to tell herself she was being insecure. She told me about the times he'd left in the middle of movies, about the vacation they'd cut short because Melissa needed him, about the conversations where Danny insisted she was jealous and unreasonable for wanting boundaries. Then she told me what finally broke her. When Danny came home and told her he was bringing Melissa to my wedding instead of her, something inside her snapped. She asked him directly if he had feelings for Melissa. He said no. So she asked the only question that mattered. If you had to choose, she said, between me and Melissa, who would it be? Danny told her it wasn't fair to ask. That answer told her everything. She said she was staying at her sister's place for a few days to think. She thanked me for the invitation, but said the situation felt too painful and messy for her to attend the wedding either way. After we hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, feeling the weight of what I'd set in motion. I didn't regret confronting Danny, but I hated that Claire was the one paying the price. And somewhere deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something much worse. A week passed with no word from Danny. He didn't call me. He didn't respond to my mom's messages. According to my dad, he showed up at the office once to help with accounts, worked in silence, and left the moment he was done. Like proximity to us was something he needed to survive, but conversation was not. Then Melissa reached out. She didn't text. She emailed. A long, carefully worded message that landed in my inbox like a challenge disguised as civility. She said she'd heard about the wedding misunderstanding from Danny and wanted to clear the air. She told me I'd gotten the wrong impression of her over the years. That she had never tried to interfere in Danny's relationships. That what she and Danny shared was a special bond. One that existed long before any girlfriend and would outlast them too. She said it wasn't fair for me or for Claire to limit Danny's time with her just because we were jealous or insecure. She ended by saying she hoped I'd reconsider, and that she was sure she'd see me at the wedding anyway. I stared at the screen for a long time before responding. Then I sent one sentence. You are not invited to my wedding. Please do not contact me again. I forwarded the email to Danny and asked if he'd told her to reach out to me. He never replied. 2 days later, Melissa took it public. She started posting on Instagram. Carefully vague, emotionally loaded content. A photo of a dress captioned, "Would have been perfect for a wedding, if only." Quotes about fake friends, about loyalty, about how real friendships outlast romantic relationships. She tagged me in all of them, but shrunk my username so small you'd only notice if you were looking closely. I screenshotted everything. Friends from high school started reaching out, confused. Melissa had told them I'd invited her to the wedding, and then uninvited her because Claire was jealous. Not one of them believed her. 2 women blocked her outright after she kept messaging them about it. 5 days after the Instagram campaign began, Danny finally called me. He didn't apologize. He accused me of turning people against Melissa. I told him the truth, that I hadn't said anything beyond confirming she was never invited. That if people were distancing themselves, maybe they were seeing what I'd seen for years. He hung up on me. Then he called my mom and told her Melissa was depressed, and that if something happened to her, it would be my fault. My mom didn't flinch. She told him if he was genuinely worried about Melissa's mental health, he should call for a wellness check or encourage her to seek professional help. Emotional manipulation wasn't going to work. Around the same time, Claire asked to meet me for coffee. When she walked in, she looked exhausted but resolute. She told me she'd made a decision. She'd asked Danny to come over. She opened her laptop and asked him to read his text conversations with Melissa out loud, at least a representative sample from the past 6 months. He refused at first, so she told him if he didn't, they were done. He read them. Messages at 2 a.m, photos throughout the day, complaints about Claire, comments from Melissa about how Claire didn't understand him like she did. Claire sent screenshots to one of her male friends for an outside perspective. His response was simple. Inappropriate at best, emotional affair at worst. When Claire asked Danny why she should stay, he said he loved her. When she asked if he had cut contact with Melissa, he said he'd try to set better boundaries, but couldn't cut her off completely. Then Melissa called. Right then. Crying. Needing him. Danny stood up and walked into the bedroom. Claire walked out of his life. And nothing was ever the same again. The weeks that followed felt like watching a slow-motion collapse you couldn't stop, even when you saw every crack forming in advance. Danny moved into my parents' house after Claire told him to get his things out of her apartment. My mom said he came home late every night, barely spoke, ate whatever was left in the fridge, and shut himself in his old bedroom like a teenager who hadn't learned how to face consequences yet. Whenever my mom tried to talk to him about Claire, about Melissa, about the fact that he was 31 years old and blowing up his own life, he shut down. Everyone's against me, he told her once. No one understands. From the outside, it was painfully obvious. He wasn't being attacked. He was being confronted by reality. Claire was gone. The woman who had loved him quietly, patiently, and consistently for 2 years had walked away without screaming, without begging, without dramatics. That should have shaken him. Instead, he clung harder to Melissa. She stopped posting about the wedding, but started posting about loyalty, about real friends who stayed when everyone else turned their backs. One photo showed her and Danny sitting at a restaurant together, her head tilted toward him, captioned like a declaration of triumph. I stopped looking. Then, 2 weeks later, my mom called me in the middle of the workday. Her voice was tight. Danny went to Turkey, she said. Apparently, Melissa had suggested they take a trip. She had vacation time saved up. Danny said he needed to clear his head. None of us were thrilled, but he was an adult. We couldn't stop him. 4 days later, my mom got a call from a hospital in Turkey. Danny had been admitted to the emergency department. He was stable, but we needed to come. My dad and I booked the first flights we could find. Expensive, complicated, exhausting. We spent the entire journey refreshing messages from a nurse who used Danny's information to send updates to my mom. When we arrived, the truth was worse than we imagined. Danny hadn't been in a car accident. He had sepsis from a kidney infection that started as a UTI. He'd been sick for days, ignored it, drank alcohol, took pain medication he couldn't name, went out anyway, fought with Melissa at a bar, passed out. Melissa didn't call an ambulance. She tried to drive him herself, crying, panicked, and crashed into a barrier in the hospital parking lot. His phone shattered. She ran inside for help, then stayed behind to deal with the police. After that, she went back to their rental apartment. She didn't call us for an entire day. By the time the hospital tracked down his passport information and contacted my mom, Danny had already been admitted for 24 hours. When Melissa finally showed up at the hospital, she looked fine. Not wrecked, not frantic, not like someone whose best friend had almost died in a foreign country. She explained everything calmly, said she needed time to rest and process. The doctor told us Danny's organs had started shutting down. He survived, but barely. Standing beside his hospital bed, watching machines beep and medications drip into his veins, I felt something break inside me. This was the cost. This was the bottom. And even then, I wasn't sure he saw it. The hospital room in Turkey was quiet in the way only medical spaces are. Sterile, humming, stripped of anything comforting. Danny was conscious, but weak. His skin looked gray under the fluorescent lights, his body thinner than I'd ever seen it. He was scared. Not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, childlike way. He kept asking about the bills, about work, about whether his insurance would cover anything. Turkey wasn't in the EU. He hadn't bought travel insurance. The hospital required payment before discharge. We were looking at tens of thousands of dollars up front. My mom stayed home, glued to her phone, talking to insurance companies. Claire, despite everything, helped her organize paperwork because she was good at that kind of thing. Danny asked where Melissa was. My dad told him she was resting at the hotel. Danny asked if she was okay. My dad nodded, but said nothing else. Melissa visited once a day, about an hour. She talked like this was all an unfortunate inconvenience, like a storm that had temporarily disrupted her vacation. She posted a photo from her hotel room about self-care during stressful moments. I couldn't look at the comments. My dad and I took turns staying with Danny. We didn't tell him that Melissa had left him alone in a foreign hospital for a full day. We didn't tell him she treated this like an inconvenience instead of an emergency. The doctor said it would be at least another 5 days before Danny could fly. My wedding was 3 weeks away. I should have been home finalizing vendors. Instead, I was watching my brother face the consequences of his choices and someone else's indifference. When Danny stabilized enough to travel, my dad and I brought him home. Melissa stayed in Turkey 2 extra days. She texted Danny when she got back. "I hope you're feeling better. Sorry the trip ended badly." That was it. No apology, no accountability. Danny said it was just bad luck. My mom asked him if leaving him alone in a foreign hospital for an entire day counted as doing her best. Danny got defensive. "She was traumatized," he said. My mom looked at him and said quietly, "You almost died." Something shifted then. Not in Danny, but in us. We stopped protecting the illusion. Claire reached out once after Danny got home, just to ask if he was okay. When he asked to meet, she said no. She told him nothing had changed, that if he ever made real changes, he could contact her, but she wasn't waiting. That conversation closed the door. For good, Danny didn't come to my wedding. The doctor hadn't cleared him for travel yet, and while I'd prepared myself for that outcome, it still felt strange standing at the altar without my brother there. I kept scanning the room, out of habit, half expecting him to walk in late, sheepish, apologetic. He never did. The wedding itself was good. Not flawless, not cinematic, but real. Mark and I got married. That was what mattered. And then something unexpected happened. Claire showed up. She texted me a week before the wedding, saying she'd thought about it and decided she wanted to be there. When I saw her walking into the venue, she looked lighter, like someone who'd set something heavy down. She stayed close to my mom and cousins, laughing easily. When she hugged me goodbye, she said she was glad she came. A week later, Danny came home. The hospital bill totaled just over $43,000. Insurance covered some, disputed others. My parents set up payment plans. The family split what remained because Danny couldn't afford it. Physically, he recovered, slowly. Emotionally, nothing changed. He stayed in contact with Melissa, defended her, minimized everything. My mom finally told him he needed to move out, that she loved him, but she wouldn't keep enabling him. Danny asked Melissa if she wanted to get a place together. She said no. She liked living alone. Danny signed a lease on a studio apartment across town. The family dynamic shifted. My dad talked to him about work. Nothing personal. My mom tried, but conversations ended with Danny shutting down or leaving. He texted me after the wedding, saying he hoped it was nice. I thanked him. That was it. Melissa posted curated photos from Turkey. Architecture, food, sunsets. A photo of her and Danny from before the trip with a caption about gratitude for friendships that weather storms. The comments praised her. I stopped looking. Claire, meanwhile, moved on. She's apparently dating someone new. Someone who prioritizes her. Life moved forward for everyone, except Danny. He's 31, living alone, in debt, estranged from his family. still defending the one person who was there when he almost died and then left. People ask me if I think he'll ever realize what he's lost. I don't know. My mom says some people have to hit rock bottom before they see clearly. I asked her if she thought this was rock bottom. She said no, that he still had further to fall. My wedding happened. My life moved forward. That's the strange thing about moments you think will define everything. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they simply mark the point where you stop waiting for other people to change. Mark and I are married now. We're planning a honeymoon for next spring, something quiet and intentional, when the finances settle and life feels less frantic. We're building something steady, honest, boring in the best way. Danny is still where he was. Physically, he's recovering. He's back at work part-time. He's learning to manage his energy. On paper, he's improving. But emotionally, he's frozen. He still defends Melissa, still frames everything as bad luck, misunderstandings, people being unfair to her. He talks about loyalty like it's something that only applies in one direction. He never talks about Claire, except to say it didn't work out. Claire, meanwhile, walked away with her dignity intact. She didn't scream. She didn't compete. She didn't beg. She set a boundary, explained it clearly, and left when it wasn't respected. That kind of strength doesn't look dramatic, but it lasts. Watching her made something click for me. Love isn't about endurance. Loyalty isn't about sacrificing yourself endlessly, and just a friend stops being harmless the moment your partner always comes second. I don't regret confronting Danny. Not because it fixed anything, but because it stopped me from lying to myself. I learned that you can love someone deeply and still refuse to enable them. That sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is step back and let people face the consequences of their own choices. And I learned this above all. The most dangerous relationships aren't always romantic. They're the ones no one is allowed to question, the ones protected by excuses, the ones that quietly destroy everything around them. I hope one day my brother sees the truth. But if he doesn't, I've learned that my life doesn't have to stay paused while I wait for him to catch up.